Imagine a lone samurai standing on a windswept hill at sunrise, blade in hand, eyes fixed firmly ahead, not just preparing for battle, but preparing for life itself. Miyamoto Musashi, history's greatest undefeated swordsman, was far more than a legendary warrior. He was a master of self-control, discipline, and relentless personal growth. But his toughest opponent wasn't waiting on the battlefield, it was lurking within his own heart. In today's world of constant distractions, stress, and self-doubt, Musashi's timeless philosophy offers the blueprint we all desperately need, a strategy for conquering the internal battles that define our success. Stay with me until the very end, because you're about to uncover the secret to mastering your own mind, emotions, and habits, transforming you into the hero of your personal story. And if stories like this captivate you, smash that subscribe button now to support the channel and join a community of like-minded warriors, seekers, and dreamers. Your journey towards unstoppable confidence and inner peace starts right here. Don't miss a single moment. Picture the first light of dawn breaking across a quiet training ground, the horizon just beginning to glow with the soft pink of morning. A lone figure stands at the center, a samurai, poised with a wooden training sword, body balanced with practiced ease. His breathing is measured, every movement deliberate, and though his weapon is simple, each swing is the distilled result of countless hours of repetition. These hours were not merely spent preparing for a future battle. Rather, they embodied a way of life. This perspective belonged to Miyamoto Musashi, a warrior philosopher who saw no boundary between how one trained and how one lived. If you wish to understand his wisdom, you must recognize his overarching principle. You can only fight the way you practice. To grasp this principle in modern terms, consider how you spend your daily moments, your routine habits, your random acts of self-discipline or laziness, the fleeting choices that shape your schedule. Musashi's life taught that the small decisions and the mindset behind them set the foundation for everything else. Victory and defeat, self-mastery and self-sabotage are ultimately determined long before the clash of swords or the onset of a major challenge. Think of every duel Musashi ever fought. The winner was decided in his mind and habits well before he stepped onto the field. This notion transcends the sword. It applies to any personal battle we face, whether confronting the fear of starting a new career, coping with self-doubt in relationships, or grappling with the anxiety of stepping out of our comfort zones. When we bring Musashi's perspective into contemporary life, it can provoke a profound shift in how we approach challenges. Perhaps you're an entrepreneur facing fierce market competition, or a writer wrestling with the blank page, or a student daunted by exams. The central question remains the same. Have you cultivated the discipline and mindset necessary to surmount the obstacles before you? Because if you haven't, the battle is lost before it begins. In Musashi's world, preparation was life itself, not just a stepping stone to something else. His was a relentless road of self-improvement, wherein every moment becomes an opportunity to sharpen the mind, refine technique, and deepen conviction. It's easy to assume these lessons belong only to warriors of a bygone era. Yet if you look deeper into Musashi's writings and the legends surrounding his 60 undefeated duels, you'll see that sword fighting was only the outward expression of a deeper philosophy. Central to this philosophy was the idea that the enemy is, more often than not, our own weaknesses, complacency, hesitation, fear of risk, and lack of focus. He believed wholeheartedly that a person could conquer these internal foes just as decisively as he once vanquished a rival on the battlefield. The key to success in any arena, Musashi taught, is unwavering discipline, what he called training without ceasing. Whether you aspire to master an art, develop resilience in your career, or simply live more intentionally, the principle remains the same. The way you practice is the way you will perform. In exploring Miyamoto Musashi's life, we must delve into the concept of discipline as the central pillar of self-mastery. He was born into the tumultuous final decades of the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period, in 16th century Japan, a time when conflict was the rule rather than the exception. Feudal lords, or daimyo, vied for supremacy, and the way of the sword was both a martial discipline and a literal means of survival. Amid this chaos, Musashi emerged as a young man of singular purpose. His father was a skilled swordsman in his own right, and Musashi's upbringing was Spartan, shaped by the rugged environment of the Japanese countryside. While many children of the samurai class received strict, formalized dojo training, Musashi often learned through direct experience, adopting an unorthodox, self-reliant approach that would define his entire life's journey. At just 13 years old, Musashi engaged in his first recorded duel against a seasoned samurai named Arima Kihei, a man confident in both technique and reputation. Conventional wisdom would have favored the older, more experienced warrior, but Musashi defied these expectations by using overwhelming aggression, instinct, and fearless determination. He wielded a wooden sword with enough force and strategic timing to defeat Arima Kihei definitively, thereby igniting the legend of a prodigy who refused to recognize the limits imposed by tradition or age. This victory served as a microcosm for everything Musashi would later embody: the fusion of fearless mindset, spontaneity, and an almost brutal directness in combat. Yet his lessons go far beyond the details of any single fight. Consider how a similar mindset might apply in today's context. Imagine you're about to pitch a creative idea in a competitive meeting, launch a startup in a saturated market, or even step into a sports match against a formidable rival. The lesson is that success often belongs not to those who rely solely on conventional training or credentials, but to those who master the mindset that there is no turning back. Musashi's fierce resolve at the age of 13 demonstrated that mastery of self, the ability to act decisively without self-doubt, can eclipse years of rote practice. After that momentous duel, Musashi chose to become a ronin, a masterless samurai, rejecting the comfort and security that came with serving a specific lord. In doing so, he aligned his life fully with the principle of relentless self-improvement. He wandered Japan, seeking out worthy opponents and honing his craft in the purest way possible, by testing it on the battlefield of real life. Free from the rigid social structures of the samurai class, he adapted everything he learned, modifying and discarding techniques, ideas, and even entire philosophies that did not serve his evolving goals. This unwavering independence was both his greatest strength and the bedrock of the life philosophy he developed. Taken in a broader sense, Musashi's decision to become a wanderer and the daily discipline that entailed can be seen as a model for modern personal growth. Instead of clinging to the security of a stable job or a structured path, sometimes we benefit from stepping outside conventional norms to test ourselves in raw, real-world situations. This does not require literal sword fights. It can manifest through taking on challenging projects, moving to a new city, or engaging wholeheartedly with any endeavor that pushes us beyond our familiar boundaries. Whatever the context, the principle stands. Discipline and a willingness to adapt are the crucibles in which self-mastery is forged. One of Musashi's most significant turning points came during the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600. This confrontation was a massive, nation-defining conflict involving over 160,000 warriors, and it fundamentally altered the balance of power in Japan. Musashi fought on the losing side, experiencing the chaos, fear, and relentless brutality of large-scale warfare. While prior duels had focused on individual skill, honed in more controlled environments, Sekigahara was a maelstrom of death and shifting alliances. Amid the confusion of this battle, Musashi witnessed firsthand how quickly even the mightiest armies could be overturned by unforeseen circumstances. A lesson in the stark reality that no plan survives contact with true chaos. For Musashi, the aftermath of this loss confirmed that living and dying were less a matter of raw strength and more a matter of adaptability, strategic thinking, and relentless mental preparedness. He interpreted this event as a demonstration that success, whether on the battlefield or in life, flows from a person's mindset. When a storm of violence and uncertainty rages, only those who have rigorously trained their minds to remain calm and strategic can act with purpose rather than panic. This insight propelled him to intensify his training even further. He continued wandering Japan, engaging in duels that refined his capacity to think quickly under pressure. The concept of fighting the way you practice was never more apparent. Because he trained as though death was always on the line, he entered every duel with no illusions. His mind was anchored in calm acceptance of risk, which allowed him to channel all his energy into swift, decisive action. That mental edge distinguished him from those who hesitated or allowed fear to paralyze their decision-making. In a modern sense, think about what happens when an unforeseen crisis hits, be it an economic downturn, a sudden job loss, a personal tragedy, or a global event that reshapes society. If you have not cultivated the discipline to remain steady, to think through uncertainty, and to adapt, you will be swept away by the chaos. The difference between those who thrive and those who collapse under stress is found in the daily habits of mind they practice beforehand. Musashi's story at Sekigahara also teaches a critical lesson about humility and perspective. Facing defeat on a massive scale forced him to examine not only his skills but also his philosophical views on life, death, and purpose. Historically, many samurai who fought on the losing side were either executed or slipped into obscurity. Musashi did neither. Instead, he absorbed the lessons of loss, refusing to be defined by it. In our lives, similarly, a devastating setback does not have to be the end of our story. If we commit to ongoing self-reflection and persistent practice, we can transform adversity into the catalyst for greater mastery and understanding. At its core, the aftermath of Sekigahara underscores the power of resilience. The raw chaos of large-scale conflict mirrored the inner battles we face: fear, doubt, regret. Musashi's advantage lay in his ability to stand firm against these internal adversaries. By concentrating on strategy, discipline, and the calm acceptance of life's inherent risks, he exemplified what it means to transform adversity into a stepping stone for higher achievement. By his late 20s, Musashi had built a reputation that few warriors could match. He was undefeated in over 60 recorded duels. Yet his name would become truly immortal after his legendary encounter with Sasaki Kojiro, a swordsman often considered his equal in skill if not his superior. Kojiro was famed for wielding an exceptionally long sword, known as the Nodachi, and for perfecting a lightning-quick technique called Tsubame Gaeshi, or swallow cut. This strike was reputed to be so swift and precise that no one could effectively defend against it. It posed the ultimate challenge to Musashi. Their duel was set for Ganru Island in April 1612. Kojiro, being a samurai of renowned standing, arrived punctually, accompanied by an air of formal decorum. Musashi, however, strategically arrived late, rowing himself to the island on a small boat. While many observers viewed lateness as a grave insult, punctuality was a core aspect of samurai etiquette. Musashi understood that timing could be a psychological weapon. By keeping Kojiro waiting, he planted seeds of anger and impatience in his opponent's mind, thus gaining an intangible but critical advantage before the duel even began. Adding further to this psychological gambit, Musashi carved a wooden sword from the very oar he used to reach the island. He deliberately shaped it to be slightly longer than Kojiro's Nodachi, thus flipping the advantage of reach onto his side. When the duel commenced, Kojiro was visibly tense, angered by Musashi's tardiness and emboldened by his reputation. Yet, at the critical moment of engagement, Musashi's strike landed with decisive swiftness upon Kojiro's head, claiming victory in a single devastating blow. Kojiro died almost instantly, and Musashi proved that he had not only matched one of the greatest swordsmen of the era, but had outsmarted and outfought him on every level. This moment in history is often romanticized as a classic showdown of skill, cunning, and lethal grace, but it encapsulates so much more of Musashi's broader philosophy. First, it underscores the power of mental warfare. Musashi's lateness was not carelessness, it was a carefully orchestrated ploy to unsettle Kojiro. Second, it highlights adaptability. Instead of using a traditional katana, Musashi improvised a weapon that exploited Kojiro's reliance on his sword's longer reach. And finally, it shows the lethal importance of clarity under pressure. When the decisive moment arrived, Musashi did not hesitate. How can this legendary duel inform our modern experiences? If you find yourself in a high-stakes negotiation, an intense job interview, or any situation where you must perform under pressure, Musashi's example urges you to prepare meticulously, understand your opponent or context intimately, and remain flexible. It might mean gathering key information about the other party's motivations, or identifying the variables that could tip the scales in your favor. It might also mean preserving a calm mind so that, in the critical moment, you can execute without second-guessing. In essence, the duel with Kojiro was not just a matter of physical prowess, but a demonstration of total strategic dominance, mental, emotional, and technical. That is why Miyamoto Musashi remains a timeless figure. He possessed the kind of self-mastery that could dismantle an opponent even before swords crossed. The lesson for us is clear: no matter how fearsome the challenge or how skilled the competition, a calm mind, a clever plan, and the willingness to act can overturn even the greatest odds. Following his victory over Kojiro, Musashi underwent a profound internal shift. Having reached what many would consider the pinnacle of samurai achievement, he saw that his greatest opponent was no longer any external foe, but the imperfections within himself. In the years that followed, he largely withdrew from the cycle of duels and public displays of martial prowess. Instead, he turned his focus inward, toward the realms of philosophy, art, and writing. This transition illustrates a critical lesson. True mastery is not solely about defeating external challenges. It is about refining the self to its highest potential. Musashi spent time studying calligraphy, painting, and even sculpture. These pursuits might seem incongruous with the life of a deadly swordsman, but from his perspective, the flow and precision required to create a sweeping brushstroke or shape a sculpture were not so different from the rhythm and timing of wielding a sword. Indeed, he believed that mastery in one field could illuminate truths applicable to all other fields. This echoes his statement, "From one thing, know 10,000 things." By exploring creative arts, he deepened his sensitivity, sharpened his eye for detail, and honed his sense of timing, all essential qualities for a strategist. This phase of Musashi's life also underscores his commitment to the principle that learning never ends. Even at an age when most warriors would retire on their laurels, content in their reputations, Musashi relentlessly questioned and expanded his understanding of life. In our modern world, this is a reminder that professional or personal milestones are not the final chapters of growth. One can always evolve further, delving into new hobbies, industries, or intellectual pursuits that might open pathways to fresh insights. A software engineer might learn music composition and discover parallels between code structure and musical harmony. A business leader could take up painting and find new ways of conceptualizing big-picture strategy. Beyond these artistic forays, Musashi began crystallizing his martial insights into text. Most notable among his writings was the Book of Five Rings, Go-Rin no Sho, completed around 1645. Part instructional manual, part philosophical treatise, it dissected the art of swordsmanship while simultaneously addressing universal principles of discipline, adaptability, and self-reflection. He structured the book into 5 sections, each corresponding to an element: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. Each element served as a metaphor for specific strategic and spiritual truths. While the text was undoubtedly rooted in the martial context of 17th century Japan, its lessons on leadership, mental resilience, and personal development have found wide application in the worlds of modern business, sports, and self-improvement. Musashi's pivot toward introspection and teaching underscores another key lesson. Mastery is a dynamic state, not a static finish line. You may surpass external benchmarks of success, but the moment you cease self-examination, you risk stagnation. By facing the battle within, as Musashi did, you learn that the deeper frontier of mastery lies in understanding the mind and heart. Whether you're an athlete refining your technique or a professional striving for excellence, the real challenge is often your own psychological limits: fatigue, doubt, complacency. Musashi shows us that these internal duels require as much discipline and creativity as any external confrontation. In Musashi's later years, he wrote another influential text, Dokudo, commonly translated as The Way of Walking Alone. This short work, composed of 21 maxims, was penned shortly before his death in 1645. While the Book of Five Rings catered somewhat to a warrior audience, offering guidance on strategy and technique, Dokudo was more intimate, an unfiltered glimpse into the ethical and philosophical underpinnings of Musashi's life. Where the Book of Five Rings provided a structured approach to strategy, Dokudo set forth a personal code of conduct that emphasized detachment, simplicity, and relentless self-honesty. One of the central themes of Dokudo is the cultivation of an unshakable inner core. Musashi advocates a lifestyle free from excessive attachment, whether to material wealth, fleeting pleasures, or even relationships that hinder personal freedom. His stance is not about avoiding love or connection. Rather, it is about maintaining independence of mind. Attachments can become chains that prevent individuals from acting freely or staying true to their chosen path. In a modern context, this resonates with the challenges of consumerism and external validation. People can become so entangled in accumulating possessions or chasing social approval that they lose sight of the deeper motivations that once guided them. Musashi's words urge us to question whether our desires serve our growth or simply distract us from meaningful goals. Another powerful lesson from Dokudo is the acceptance of impermanence. Musashi writes about not grieving separation too deeply, recognizing that life is in constant flux. In the 21st century, this principle remains highly relevant. Careers shift, technologies become obsolete, and relationships can fracture or evolve. If we cling too tightly to any one reality, we set ourselves up for suffering when changes inevitably occur. The samurai environment in which Musashi lived was a stark backdrop for such a lesson. Life and death were never more than a sword's length away. By accepting impermanence, Musashi remained calm in the face of uncertainty, focusing instead on what he could control, his own actions and mindset. A third element of Dokudo is the primacy of personal accountability. Musashi's life as a ronin exemplified self-reliance. He served no lord and followed no strict dojo tradition, forging his path through introspection and direct experience. He advises against relying on external teachings or institutions if they do not align with one's core principles. In contemporary life, This might translate to carefully choosing mentors, institutions, or belief systems, ensuring they truly resonate with your fundamental values rather than adopting them blindly for security or prestige. When viewed through a broader lens, Dakota stands as a meditation on the power of solitude and deliberate focus. Musashi was not advocating loneliness, but highlighting the value of self-sufficiency, emotionally, financially, and philosophically. By freeing oneself from needless entanglements, one gains the clarity to act decisively and ethically. For the modern reader, bombarded by social media, endless consumer options, and ever-multiplying life choices, Musashi's counsel reminds us that less can indeed be more. In paring down distractions and attachments, we find the freedom to devote ourselves more completely to the pursuits that truly matter. Taken together, the Book of Five Rings and Dakota offer complementary insights. The former details how to engage effectively with the world, strategy, adaptability, and skill, while the latter teaches how to remain true to oneself, detachment, integrity, and self-awareness. Both facets are essential in Musashi's view, for a life of mastery is incomplete if it is solely outward-facing or solely introspective. Balance, as in all aspects of Musashi's philosophy, is the ultimate key. To conclude this first part of our exploration, let us reflect on Musashi's journey and its broad implications for any path of self-mastery. From his earliest days training in the mountains, fighting his first duel at 13 and wandering as a ronin, Musashi embodied the principle that one's approach to life determines one's outcomes. He did not rely on formal schooling or noble patronage. He relied on relentless practice, ruthless self-assessment, and the courage to face fear head-on. This combination of qualities made him uniquely adaptable, unburdened by rigid expectations, and constantly in dialogue with his own evolving experience. If there's one lesson to highlight as we transition to the deeper complexities of his philosophy, it is this: preparation shapes destiny. Musashi's entire life was a testament to the idea that how you train, mentally, physically, and spiritually, directly influences how you perform under real pressure. It is a life-altering career move, a major creative project, or a personal challenge like overcoming addiction. The outcome is usually set by the daily discipline and mindset you bring to bear long before the decisive moment. In a modern context, we often celebrate spontaneity and worry about over-preparation, but Musashi's lessons suggest a different perspective. True freedom in the moment, the ability to act swiftly and effectively, arises from deep, habitual practice. Much like a jazz musician who improvises effortlessly only after mastering scales and chords, Musashi adapted spontaneously in duels precisely because he had spent thousands of hours ingraining fundamental principles into his muscle memory and mental processes. Spontaneity without a foundation is just randomness. Spontaneity built upon a strong base of training becomes creative mastery. Moreover, Musashi's life illuminates the interplay between external victories and internal equilibrium. He was undefeated in duels not because he was an unfeeling machine, but because he had cultivated a profound calmness and clarity of purpose. His understanding of death as an ever-present reality freed him from the paralysis that fear can impose. In modern life, while we may not face mortal duels, we face psychological duels every day: anxiety, procrastination, and the fear of judgment, among others. The principle remains: those who prepare their minds to accept and adapt to the worst outcome often find themselves operating with greater bravery and precision. Finally, we see in Musashi a willingness to evolve, even when he was already hailed as a master. He transitioned from the sword to the brush, from dueling to writing, and from outward confrontation to inward reflection. This growth mindset is as relevant today as it was in feudal Japan. Too often, people believe they have arrived, after achieving a major goal, earning a degree, securing a promotion, or launching a successful product. Musashi's journey suggests that true mastery is an ongoing cycle of learning, testing, and refining, never ceasing until one's final breath. As we proceed into the subsequent parts of this expanded article, we will delve more deeply into specific elements of Musashi's teachings, from the five-element structure of the Book of Five Rings to the personal, introspective guidelines of Dokodo. The aim is to translate these centuries-old lessons into practical insights that resonate in the noise and complexity of the 21st century. For now, consider how the principle, "you can only fight the way you practice," might apply to your own life. In what ways might you train your mind, habits, and spirit so that when the moment of truth arrives, whatever shape that moment takes, you can meet it with the same calm, prepared determination that Musashi displayed on every battlefield? In this second part, we turn our focus to the core philosophies contained in Miyamoto Musashi's The Book of Five Rings, a text that has transcended its 17th century martial origins to become a cornerstone of strategic thinking in domains as varied as business, sports, and creative arts. Far from being simply an exposition on swordsmanship, the Book of Five Rings is a treatise on how to approach life as if it were a battlefield, and how to cultivate a mindset that remains unflinching in the face of continuous change. Musashi divided his manuscript into 5 sections, each named after an element in Japanese cosmology: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. At first glance, these elements might seem to be esoteric or purely symbolic, yet each one represents a distinct mode of thought and practice that can be applied not only to combat but also to any endeavor requiring skillful execution and clear strategic vision. By understanding how these elements interrelate, one gains a holistic perspective on problem-solving and self-development. The Earth book forms the foundation, reminding us of the importance of mastering the basics. Just as a building needs a solid base to stand, any skill set rests on fundamental principles. For a swordsman in Musashi's time, these would be proper footwork, grip, posture, and timing. For a modern professional, foundational skills might include effective communication, time management, and emotional resilience. No matter the discipline, Musashi insists that skipping or neglecting fundamentals leads to brittle success, easily toppled under real pressure. Next is the water book, symbolizing fluidity and adaptability. Water takes the shape of its container and can navigate around obstacles. Musashi believed that the ability to change tactics and flow with circumstances was critical in battle. Translating this to today's context, adaptability is a hallmark of successful entrepreneurs who pivot when market conditions shift, and of leaders who reorganize teams to meet evolving challenges. Musashi's perspective here is simple yet profound. If you remain rigid, you will shatter under force. If you remain fluid, you can absorb impact and respond effectively. The fire book represents the intensity and ferocity of direct confrontation. In combat, fire is the decisive charge, the unrelenting attack, the willingness to strike first when the opportunity arises. On a personal level, this could mean summoning the courage to take a calculated risk or launching an initiative when timing is ripe. Far from advocating recklessness, Musashi teaches the necessity of harnessing decisive energy when the moment calls for it. The lesson is that there are times in life to be reserved and times to act with boldness. Knowing which is part of strategic wisdom. Following this is the Wind book, which focuses on understanding others. In Musashi's day, this meant studying the fighting styles of rival schools to identify their strengths and weaknesses. Today, we might interpret the Wind book as a call to empathize with others' perspectives, whether competitors, colleagues, customers, or critics. By seeing the world through their eyes, you can anticipate challenges, collaborate more effectively, or even neutralize opposition by recognizing how they think and move. Finally, the Void Book delves into the concept of no mind or empty mind, referencing the ability to act without being bogged down by conscious deliberation. This is the pinnacle of mastery, where execution becomes effortless and you perform at your highest level without overthinking. Such a state is frequently described by modern psychologists as flow, a mental space where action and awareness merge and performance peaks. For Musashi, reaching the void was akin to transcending conscious technique, thus uniting mind, body, and spirit in one seamless, adaptive response. To truly absorb the wisdom of the Book of Five Rings, it helps to see how Musashi's philosophy extends beyond tactical advice into a lifelong commitment to self-cultivation. One of his famous maxims was, "Do nothing that is of no use." This injunction might sound austere, but it underscores the necessity of eliminating wasteful practices, be they habits, thoughts, or distractions that hamper progress. Reflect on your own life for a moment. How many hours do you lose to unproductive screen time, procrastination, or meaningless tasks that neither rejuvenate your spirit nor advance your goals? Musashi's approach demands that we scrutinize each choice, whittling away all that distracts from our purpose. This doesn't mean you must turn into a joyless ascetic. Rather, it invites you to be intentional about how you invest your energy. If something nurtures your creativity, fosters relationships, or builds resilience, it holds value. If it only fritters away your attention, Musashi would challenge its place in your life. This principle ties back to the Earth Book, which stresses a firm grounding in essential truths. Before you can excel in any domain, be it writing, sports, or entrepreneurship, you must first ask, what is absolutely necessary for me to master? Then you prioritize and train meticulously, shedding superfluous ideas and superficial pursuits. This disciplined approach was the bedrock of Musashi's success. Despite never training under one formal school for long, he assimilated the fundamentals of various styles and distilled them into a personalized, effective system. Aligning with the Water Book, we see Musashi's insistence on adaptability in everyday life. The modern world is in a constant state of flux, driven by technological innovations, shifting social norms, and economic unpredictability. Much like water, those who refuse to adapt risk becoming rigid and breaking under the strain. People who cling to outdated skills or remain wedded to inflexible mindsets often struggle in the face of rapid change. Musashi's call to be like water is a reminder: keep learning, keep evolving, and stay open to new possibilities. The Fire Book's lessons on decisive action can be a blueprint for tackling life's biggest challenges. In business, you might spend significant time in strategy mode, analyzing markets and forging a brand identity. But there comes a day when you have to launch. Hesitation at that juncture can cost you everything. Similarly, in personal transformations, quitting a bad habit, initiating a life change, or starting a demanding fitness program, there is a pivotal moment when talk must translate into decisive steps. Musashi's metaphor of fire teaches that once you commit, you must do so completely, using your well-honed discipline and courage to see it through. Meanwhile, the Wind Book's lessons on understanding others play out in today's interconnected world. Whether you're marketing a product, negotiating a salary, or forging personal relationships, awareness of different perspectives can create synergy or allow you to outmaneuver conflict. Like Musashi's study of rival schools, modern professionals who study market trends, customer psychology, and even competitor tactics can leverage that knowledge for greater success. Finally, the Void Book's concept of no mind or flow emphasizes that preparation and discipline eventually lead to a form of intuitive mastery. After you've practiced a skill to the point of second nature, your mind can operate on a higher plane, free of the clutter that burdens novices. This principle applies to a pianist who can improvise gracefully, or a leader who can handle crises on instinct because they've internalized their craft. In all these examples, the unifying thread is that skill and mindset must evolve together. You cannot achieve flow if your fundamentals are weak or your mind is undisciplined. Shifting our lens from the Book of Five Rings back to Dokodo, we observe that Musashi's later writings crystallize his belief in discipline, emotional independence, and moral clarity. While the Book of Five Rings teaches how to engage and adapt in a competitive world, Dokodo teaches how to navigate the solitude and self-examination necessary for genuine mastery. In a sense, it completes the picture. One must not only conquer the external world, but also make peace with the inner self. One of the notable principles of Dokodo is accept everything just the way it is. At a glance, this might be misread as fatalism, but it is better understood as a rejection of complaining about or resisting reality. By accepting that life unfolds in ways beyond one's complete control, you free mental energy to focus on what can be controlled: your response. This is in harmony with many modern psychological and philosophical frameworks, such as Stoicism, which encourages us to discern between what we can influence and what we cannot. Similarly, Musashi warns against seeking pleasure for its own sake. In a society saturated with opportunities for instant gratification, be it social media, binge watching, or compulsive shopping, this teaching is especially relevant. Pleasure itself is not the enemy. The problem arises when chasing it becomes the primary driver of one's life, displacing long-term goals and self-improvement. Musashi's approach calls for a reorientation of priorities, reminding us that while simple enjoyments can be restorative, mindless indulgence can undermine the discipline needed for mastery. Do not be saddened by separation is another Dokodo principle that cuts to the heart of emotional detachment. Musashi recognized that all attachments, even those based on love, friendship, or mentorship, must eventually face the reality of impermanence. Whether due to death, changes in personal circumstances, or sheer life transitions, everything evolves. Many people experience deep suffering because they try to cling tightly to what must eventually transform or pass away. While Musashi's stance may seem austere, it underscores the necessity of cultivating inner resilience. This does not mean denying grief or the significance of bonds, but rather learning to accept their transitory nature without losing the equilibrium of one's mind. This emotional discipline dovetails with the strategic discipline explored in the Book of Five Rings. One can't effectively execute strategy in the outer world while being a slave to emotional upheavals in the inner world. When you combine the external adaptability championed in the elemental books with the internal steadiness promoted in Dokodo, you find a holistic framework for facing life's challenges. You become the kind of person who can remain calm and decisive even under stress, who can plan carefully and strike swiftly when opportunity arises, and who can weather loss or separation without dissolving into despair. For a contemporary analogy, look at high-performing individuals in fields that demand both technical proficiency and emotional stability. Elite athletes, top-level executives, creative geniuses. Those who truly excel typically exhibit a blend of relentless discipline, the earth element, adaptive thinking, fire, empathy or awareness of opponents and collaborators, wind, and the ability to perform under pressure without succumbing to anxiety, void. Then, in their personal lives, they maintain certain non-negotiable principles: detachment from trivial material desires, acceptance of life's uncertainties, and a strong internal code to keep themselves balanced amid success and turmoil. Musashi's life stands as an early, vivid embodiment of these principles, showing us that the battles we face are never solely external. We often speak of Musashi's life in terms of battles and duels, but beneath these physical contests lay an ever-present mental war, a war against complacency and the illusions that hamper true understanding. One could argue that Musashi's greatest victory was not over any singular opponent, but over his own weaknesses. From the vantage point of modern psychology, this point is crucial. Your inner scripts, those habitual patterns of thought and emotion, shape how you interpret events and respond to stress. If your inner scripts are riddled with fear, self-doubt, or the need for external validation, those traits will compromise your ability to act decisively when life's sword is drawn. Musashi had a concept called fudoshin, often translated as immovable mind. This state involves being unruffled by external events or internal anxieties, maintaining composure under duress. For him, it was not a natural gift, but a skill honed over countless hours of mindfulness, self-reflection, and repeated immersion in high-risk scenarios. Like any skill, fudoshin can be developed by consciously exposing yourself to challenging conditions and practicing mental discipline. One modern approach to fudoshin might be structured stress inoculation. For example, if you fear public speaking, you can start by giving talks in low-stakes environments, gradually increasing your audience size until you can handle major presentations with composure. Similarly, if you are launching a startup, engaging in thorough market research, prototypes, and smaller pilot initiatives can prepare you for the big duel of a major product rollout. By repeatedly confronting and managing stress in calibrated doses, you teach your mind to remain stable when the stakes are high. Another aspect of Musashi's internal war was combating the temptation of easy living. After all, post-victory comforts often become traps, lulling a person into stagnation. Despite his fame, Musashi never settled into complacency. He dressed simply, ate modestly, and made a point to keep his body and mind honed through regular practice. In our time of pervasive comfort, this lesson rings especially true. How many of us let our guard down once we've achieved a milestone, be it financial, professional, or relational success, only to lose that edge which helped us succeed in the first place? Musashi's refusal to indulge in comfort aligns with modern studies on grit and resilience. Researchers have shown that individuals who deliberately introduce voluntary hardship into their routines, like challenging workouts, cold showers, fasting, or strict scheduling, tend to exhibit higher levels of perseverance. These micro-challenges fortify mental resolve, making it easier to handle bigger adversities. By continuously living slightly outside your comfort zone, you maintain the psychological elasticity to adapt under stress, a principle Musashi exemplified throughout his life. Taken together, the mental battles that Musashi fought, and encouraged others to fight, are the true heart of his philosophy. Winning a duel is a fleeting accomplishment. Victory over your own limitations resonates through every facet of your life. By applying fudoshin, stress inoculation, and an aversion to complacency, you create a systematic approach to growth that remains relevant whether you are an MMA fighter, a corporate strategist, an artist, or a parent guiding children in an uncertain world. The real struggle, Musashi insisted, is always within. Once you realize that, every battlefield becomes manageable. If Musashi's life was a continuous lesson in discipline and introspection, it was also a compelling study in leadership by example. Though he was never formally a daimyo or general commanding vast armies, his influence on students, peers, and even adversaries was profound. People gravitated to Musashi not because of a title he held, but because of the authenticity and mastery he displayed. This phenomenon underscores a concept that resonates today. True leadership often comes less from formal authority and more from the respect earned through consistent excellence and integrity. A leader, or anyone in a position of responsibility, can glean crucial insights from Musashi's style. Firstly, he taught by demonstration. His approach was more follow me into the fray than do as I say. In times when hierarchical structures and rule by fear were common, Musashi embodied a different model, leading through personal example and an unwavering ethical code. Even if you're not leading soldiers, the principle stands. Whether you manage a business team, run a classroom, or guide a community group, your team's respect and loyalty grow exponentially when they see you uphold the standards you set. Secondly, Musashi's leadership thrived on clarity of purpose. He believed in a singular focus, the relentless pursuit of improvement both in martial skill and character. A modern leader might interpret this as having a clear mission and set of values. Businesses that know exactly what they stand for and communicate it effectively can rally employees and customers alike, just as Musashi's peers recognize the unwavering authenticity behind his swordsmanship. People in our time recognize when a company or individual genuinely embodies their mission, as opposed to merely using slogans. Another dimension of Musashi's leadership was his willingness to challenge established norms. He questioned the techniques of famous schools, integrating what worked and discarding what did not. Many martial schools were steeped in rigid tradition, but Musashi found limitations in orthodoxy that stifled adaptation. In a contemporary sense, leaders who encourage innovation and challenge old processes, even those once deemed sacrosanct, often drive the most significant progress. A team culture that rewards experimentation and thoughtful risk-taking can remain nimble in industries that shift rapidly. In addition, Musashi's humility played a role in his leadership. Despite his fearsome reputation, he displayed a certain modesty, choosing simplicity in dress and lifestyle. This trait dismantled ego, which in many hierarchical systems can become a destructive force. A modern parallel might be a CEO who remains approachable, engages with entry-level employees, and remains open to constructive criticism. This posture fosters trust and authenticity, removing barriers that can impede a free exchange of ideas. Lastly, consider Musashi's ability to instill confidence in those around him. Even though many of his lessons were imparted through direct instruction in swordsmanship, the underlying message was, you can surpass your limitations. By setting an example of ceaseless practice and adaptation, he showed that continuous self-improvement was within everyone's reach. Today's leaders who emphasize coaching, skill development, and personal growth among their teams similarly empower people to break through their perceived ceilings. Instead of creating dependency, they nurture resilience, a hallmark of effective leadership in an unpredictable world. Thus, Musashi's form of leadership can be summarized as an unspoken but deeply felt contract. I will strive for mastery and moral clarity, and I invite you to do the same. No pretensions, no empty titles, just the raw power of example and an unwavering commitment to growth. Centuries later, that model still resonates wherever individuals aim not just to lead, but to inspire. Shifting from leadership to the broader world of modern applications, it becomes evident that Musashi's teachings serve as a universal blueprint for anyone seeking mastery in any field. Take business strategy, for instance. Countless executives and entrepreneurs have cited the Book of Five Rings as a must-read. The elemental framework, earth, water, fire, wind, and void, maps elegantly onto the complexities of running an enterprise. Earth can symbolize the foundational structures of a company: stable finances, core products, and essential operations. Water stands for fluidity in responding to market changes, while fire represents aggressive market pushes or bold new product launches. Wind is analogous to competitor analysis and understanding the broader industry landscape. Finally, void, akin to strategic intuition, emerges once all other elements are in harmony. However, beyond corporate boardrooms, these principles also resonate in the realm of personal creativity. Writers, painters, musicians, and designers all benefit from discipline, earth, when honing fundamental skills, fluid experimentation, water, when exploring new styles, and decisive action, fire, when bringing a work to public view. The wind element emerges in the feedback loop with an audience or community, helping the creative individual remain attuned to the external environment without losing personal authenticity. Over time, the void manifests in those inspired bursts of insight where creativity seems to flow unbidden, a result of the countless hours of preparation that preceded it. Consider also the sphere of athletic performance. Coaches who understand Musashi's teachings emphasize not only physical drills and technical training, but also mental fortitude, adaptability, and the psychological readiness to seize opportunity. Athletes practice for every contingency, internalize strategies to the point of instinct, and learn to manage emotions under the crucible of competition, exactly as Musashi would recommend. Even the concept of entering the zone, or flow state in sports, parallels the void, where conscious thought aligns seamlessly with muscle memory. At a more personal level, Musashi's insistence on discipline and detachment becomes a guiding principle for self-improvement. From adopting healthier lifestyle habits to cultivating mindfulness, individuals who wish to break destructive patterns can turn to Musashi's model. The logic is consistent. Identify core principles, earth, remain flexible in approach, water, strike decisively against bad habits, fire, understand the triggers and social environments that shape behavior, wind, and eventually progress toward an internal harmony where positive habits operate with minimal friction, void. Yet the key to unlocking Musashi's wisdom in our modern context lies not in mere intellectual appreciation, but in genuine application. It is easy to admire the poetry of "from one thing know 10,000 things," or to resonate with "do nothing that is of no use." The harder step is the day-to-day execution, removing distractions, setting routines, regularly reviewing goals, and confronting uncomfortable truths about one's own Musashi's power as a teacher stems from his insistence that philosophy must be lived, not merely discussed. In essence, Musashi's strategies serve multiple functions. They offer a scaffold for understanding the interplay of discipline, adaptability, decisive action, empathetic awareness, and transcendent skill. They also provide a mirror, reflecting how honest we're being with ourselves regarding our dedication and potential for growth. When we look into that mirror and see complacency or fear, Musashi's writings challenge us to address these weaknesses head-on. They stand as a timeless call to transform everyday life, be it business, sports, art, or personal well-being, into a continuous path of training. As we close this second part of our exploration, let us reaffirm the interconnectedness of Musashi's two main texts, the Book of Five Rings and Dokudo. Together they form a comprehensive approach to both the outer battles we must fight, whether in a marketplace, a sports arena, or a personal creative field, and the inner battles of self-doubt, attachment, and emotional volatility. The synergy between these works is what grants Musashi's legacy its remarkable staying power. In the Book of Five Rings, we see a systematic breakdown of how to analyze and respond to challenges. You learn to build a stable foundation, earth, remain flexible, water, be fearless when action is needed, fire, understand other perspectives, wind, and eventually move beyond conscious thought through mastery, void. Meanwhile, Dokudo reminds you to be ruthlessly honest with yourself, to accept life's impermanence, to detach from illusions and excessive desires, and to anchor yourself in simplicity and authenticity. One text gives you the tactical tools to navigate the world. The other gives you the ethical and emotional tools to remain true to yourself. At the heart of both texts is the notion that you forge yourself through consistent, daily practice. Musashi's warning, "You can only fight the way you practice," applies equally to how you handle business negotiations, creative breakthroughs, athletic competitions, and personal relationships. If you habitually approach tasks with half-hearted effort or scattered focus, don't be surprised when the results reflect that same lack of commitment. In turn, if you train yourself to be centered, disciplined, and open to learning, you will find that these qualities effortlessly manifest when real pressure arrives. Therefore, when you look at the swirl of modern life with its floods of information, competitive pressures, and emotional pitfalls, it becomes clearer why Musashi's words still resonate. You are perpetually in some form of battle, whether negotiating deadlines, coping with personal loss, or racing to innovate before a competitor does. Clarity, adaptability, emotional balance, and the willingness to take decisive action, these are not luxuries but necessities. Musashi's teachings distill them into an elegant set of principles and practices. Finally, Musashi underscores that mastery in any domain is both an external and internal quest. Winning outward battles, gaining recognition, market share, or trophies can be hollow if you're losing the internal war against fear, complacency, or moral compromise. His life story and writings insist that these two fronts must be managed in unison. Only then can you claim to be truly undefeated, regardless of how many times you may stumble along the way. Having now dissected the bedrock of Musashi's strategic and philosophical contributions, we can turn to the third and final part of this expanded article to examine in greater detail how to implement these lessons in day-to-day life. How to merge discipline, adaptability, and self-reflection into actionable strategies for personal transformation. It is in the practical application that Musashi's greatest gift to us emerges, the possibility of forging an indomitable spirit capable of meeting life with skillful strength and unyielding clarity. We have journeyed through Miyamoto Musashi's historical context, dissected his defining texts, and explored the duality of outer strategy and inner discipline. Now we arrive at the most crucial step, applying these lessons in everyday life. It is one thing to understand concepts like flow state or detachment, but quite another to integrate them into your daily routine so that they reshape your mindset and your results. Indeed, Musashi would argue that knowledge without application is as futile as a sword left to rust in its scabbard. So how does one begin to embody Musashi's teachings in a practical, modern setting? The first step is to adopt a training mindset in all pursuits. Whether you're sharpening a specific skill or cultivating mental toughness, consistent practice is non-negotiable. Too often, people attempt to improve sporadically, writing one day, meditating the next, or working out only when motivation strikes. Musashi's life reminds us that mastery demands daily repetition. If you want to become a better writer, write daily. If you want to become more patient, practice patience in every situation that tests you. By transforming your life into a continuous dojo, you embed discipline at the core of your identity. Within this training mindset, be sure to focus on fundamentals first. For instance, if your aim is to become physically fit, begin with foundational strength and cardiovascular exercises, gradually layering complexity. If your goal is entrepreneurial success, master essential business practices, sound financial planning, compelling marketing, and data-driven decision-making before chasing trendy tactics. This echoes the Earthbook's message, do not neglect the bedrock upon which all advanced techniques rest. Next, incorporate adaptability. This does not mean discarding your plan at the first hint of adversity, but rather remaining alert to feedback and changing conditions. In a world of rapid technological and social evolution, rigid adherence to outdated strategies can be a recipe for failure. Whether you're managing a project at work or aiming to improve a personal skill, schedule regular check-ins with yourself or your team to assess what's working and what needs recalibration. This approach mirrors the water book's fluidity, enabling you to flow around obstacles rather than be halted by them. Simultaneously, cultivate the decisive energy of the fire book. When the right opportunity surfaces, be it an audition, a pitch to investors, or a significant career move, commit fully. Musashi's life story shows that half measures rarely produce legendary outcomes. Prepare meticulously, then trust in your training when you strike. The key is to distinguish between impulsive risk and bold strategic action. An impulsive act is usually unplanned and fueled by impatience, while a bold strategic move is grounded in deliberate preparation. Just as importantly, pay attention to the lessons of the Wind Book, understanding others. In your professional relationships, this might mean studying your colleagues' motivations, communication styles, or emotional triggers to foster smoother collaboration. In personal relationships, empathy and active listening can deepen bonds and avert unnecessary conflicts. Musashi's insight was that true strength arises not merely from personal skill, but from comprehending how opponents or allies operate. Today, empathy is a superpower in both leadership and interpersonal success. Finally, remember the void, the state of effortless action that emerges when preparation, intuition, and skill converge. However, do not chase it obsessively. Flow arrives naturally when the foundation of discipline, adaptability, and decisive action has been laid. Overthinking it can be counterproductive, an example of how self-consciousness can shatter a fragile moment of peak performance. Instead, allow your consistent practice and self-awareness to guide you so that your mind and body begin to operate in unison. Beyond the practical applications of Musashi's elemental teachings, Dokudo offers a deeply personal roadmap for inner mastery. One of its most powerful lessons for contemporary life is the art of detachment, which in practical terms translates to reducing the noise and clutter that distract you from your true objectives. In today's hyper-connected world, attention is a precious commodity. Advertisements, social media feeds, and digital entertainment compete incessantly for your focus. To walk the path of mastery, you must guard your attention as diligently as a samurai guards his life. Start by conducting an attention audit. Track your activities for a typical week, noting how much time you spend scrolling aimlessly through social media, watching random videos, or consuming trivial news. You might be shocked by how these minutes add up, subtly eroding your capacity for deep work or mindful living. Then, systematically reduce or eliminate these sources of distraction. If necessary, use tools like website blockers, set time limits on apps, or designate specific no-phone hours during the day. Musashi's warning, "Do nothing that is of no use," encapsulates this approach perfectly. Another aspect of detachment involves curating your material possessions. Minimalism aligns well with Musashi's example of living simply and carrying only what was essential. This is not about never owning anything luxurious or beautiful. It is about ensuring that what you possess serves a meaningful function and does not own you in return. Start small, clean a closet or a desk, discarding items that no longer have purpose or value. Progressively expand this mindset until every corner of your environment reflects clarity and intention. Emotional detachment is equally vital. While modern society often prizes emotional expression, Musashi's teaching to not be saddened by separation reminds us that clinging desperately to transient conditions or relationships can lead to unnecessary anguish. This does not imply cold-heartedness. Rather, it's about recognizing that life's natural cycles include both union and parting. By accepting this impermanence, you free yourself from debilitating fear or despair when change arises. This emotional maturity allows you to keep a clear head and make healthier decisions, even in the face of personal upheavals. Consider also the principle of accept everything just the way it is. In practical terms, this can be an antidote to modern anxiety and resentment. People often spend valuable mental and emotional energy wishing their reality were different, wanting a different upbringing, a different job market, or a different set of circumstances. Musashi would argue that such wishing wastes energy that could be directed toward adaptability and action. By acknowledging reality as it stands, flaws and all, you open the door to constructive responses. This philosophy parallels the common therapeutic advice to focus on what's within your control while letting go of the rest. In many ways, Dokodo is about building a fortress of self-sufficiency around your mind and heart. Musashi suggests that if you rely too heavily on external validations, be it approval, material success, or emotional support, you become vulnerable to forces outside your control. The more you cultivate your own inner resources, discipline, clarity, resilience, the less you are swayed by life's storms. This doesn't mean isolation from society, but rather a stable emotional core that remains intact regardless of external changes. Taken together, the principles in Dokodo add a contemplative depth to the more action-oriented teachings of the Book of Five Rings. While the latter guides you on how to navigate and eventually triumph in the external world, Dokodo shows you how to keep your inner world from falling into disarray. This dual mastery of both self and environment is what made Musashi an enduring figure well beyond his lifetime. One of the most challenging aspects of implementing Musashi's teachings in modern life is consistency. Our contemporary routines are rarely as regimented as a samurai's. We juggle multiple roles: employee, parent, student, friend, and we deal with demands that shift from day to day. Musashi's environment, while harsh and often unpredictable, was in some respects simpler: train, fight, survive. Yet the essence of his discipline remains applicable even amidst our complexity. To foster consistency, consider structuring your day around non-negotiable pillars of practice. These are activities so essential to your well-being and progress that you prioritize them regardless of external circumstances. They might include a morning meditation, an hour of creative work, a regular physical exercise routine, or a weekly review of goals and finances. Even if life becomes chaotic, these pillars serve as anchors that keep you aligned with your long-term objectives. Another key to consistent practice is developing what psychologists call implementation intentions. Instead of vaguely stating, "I want to read more," you specify how, when, and where you will read. For instance, you might commit to reading for 20 minutes during your lunch break in a quiet corner. By defining the context, you reduce the friction that can derail good intentions. Musashi's approach to training was highly contextual. He adapted to the environment at hand, whether a dojo, an open field, or a mountainside. Adopting a similar specificity in modern habits ensures that your goals do not remain abstract ideals, but become practical steps integrated into your daily life. Of course, despite the best planning, setbacks will occur. Musashi's own journey included defeats on large-scale battlefields and close brushes with danger. The key difference lay in how he transformed those setbacks into lessons, refining his techniques and perspective. In a modern setting, a failed business venture, a creative slump, or a personal disappointment should similarly be seen as data. Fuel for increment. This is how you maintain forward momentum, turning adversity into an asset rather than an excuse to quit. Accountability can also enhance consistency. While Musashi famously walked a solitary path, he still engaged with other warriors, tested himself against them, and, in certain periods, taught students. In our time, you might join a mastermind group, hire a coach, or simply partner with a friend who shares your aspirations. Regular check-ins and feedback can keep you honest about your progress and help you spot blind spots you might miss if you operate in isolation. A final consideration is the role of rest and reflection. While Musashi advocated ceaseless training, he also spent time in quiet contemplation, living simply in nature and exploring the arts. In your own life, be sure to incorporate periods of deliberate rest, moments free from the pressure to perform or be productive. This pause is essential for preventing burnout and allowing creative insights to emerge. As in the Void book, sometimes the best strategy is to clear your mind entirely, trusting that the clarity you need will arise in the space you create. Ultimately, consistency is the glue that holds Musashi's principles together in a modern lifestyle. Without it, even the most profound insights dissolve into fleeting inspiration. With it, every practice session, every reflective pause, and every challenge overcome weaves into a tapestry of mastery, a testament to Musashi's immortal claim that the way is in training. Let us pivot to one of the most misunderstood yet potent elements of Musashi's philosophy: fear management. Musashi wrote that a warrior should accept death in his heart every day, which can initially sound grim or morbid. However, this statement points to a powerful mental exercise of confronting the worst-case scenario. By frequently visualizing the possibility of death, a very real threat in his era, he stripped it of its paralyzing hold on his mind. When it came time to fight, he did so unencumbered by the dread of potential fatality, able to focus fully on strategy and execution. In today's context, although most of us are not threatened by lethal duels, we face fears of different kinds: public humiliation, career stagnation, financial ruin, or social rejection. These fears can be just as crippling if left unexamined. Taking a cue from Musashi, one practical exercise is to deliberately imagine your worst-case scenario in vivid detail. Ask yourself, if this happened, what steps would I take to recover or cope? Paradoxically, by engaging with this nightmare scenario mentally, you often find that the outcome, while unpleasant, is survivable. This realization frees you from much of the anxiety that previously loomed large. This technique is akin to modern cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, methods, where individuals systematically challenge catastrophic thinking by reasoning through the actual consequences. Once the fear is demystified, action becomes simpler. For example, if you fear starting a new business, imagine the worst case: losing money, having to return to a regular job, and facing some embarrassment. While stressful, it's not an existential end. Embracing this possibility can bolster your resolve, allowing you to proceed with greater calm and mental clarity. Moreover, Musashi's approach to fear management aligns well with building self-confidence through proof of resilience. Each time you survive a tough situation, be it a failed project, a harsh rejection, or a public speaking mishap, you create a memory of endurance that you can draw upon in future challenges. This library of resilience becomes a pillar of unshakable confidence. You learn that even if events go poorly, you can adapt and recover. Yet, Musashi also warns against confusion between bravado and true fearlessness. A person who recklessly charges into danger without preparation might seem fearless, but that is merely foolhardy. True fearlessness emerges from thorough training and a disciplined mind. You earn the right to be fearless in a sense by investing in the daily practices that build skill, mental clarity, and emotional balance. Without that foundation, you risk underestimating real threats and jeopardizing your well-being or goals. Lastly, fear management intertwines with the principle of fudoshin, or the immovable mind. Accepting fear's existence without letting it dictate your actions is a hallmark of psychological maturity. This capacity becomes invaluable in unpredictable situations: a sudden crisis at work, an unexpected family emergency, or a seismic shift in one's personal or professional environment. Maintaining composure in such instances not only benefits you, but also those who rely on you for stability or guidance. In sum, Musashi's treatment of fear is not an invitation to deny its presence, but rather to face it head-on, incorporate it into strategic thinking, and relegate it to a factor among many rather than the dominant force. Whether you apply this in entrepreneurship, interpersonal relations, or personal challenges, the principle remains the same. Fear, when examined and understood, loses much of its power. As much as Musashi's philosophy revolves around rigorous discipline and emotional resilience, it also holds space for creativity and spontaneity, a duality that surprises many who only picture him as a grim samurai. In his later years, Musashi produced striking works of art and calligraphy, demonstrating that mastery of one domain can inform mastery in another. This intersection between discipline and creative freedom is crucial to recognize. One does not stifle the other, rather, they can become mutually reinforcing. In a practical sense, the more disciplined you are in honing fundamental skills, the freer you become to explore innovative ideas. Consider a jazz musician who rigorously practices scales, chord progressions, and advanced techniques. This technical foundation, painstakingly built, then allows for improvisation that seems almost magical to the untrained observer. Similarly, Musashi's mastery of swordsmanship, rooted in thousands of hours of disciplined training, gave him the mental capacity to adapt spontaneously against unpredictable opponents. This principle of disciplined creativity applies to problem-solving in the workplace as well. Teams that invest time in learning the rules of the game, whether those are industry regulations, best practices, or internal processes, can then break those rules thoughtfully when necessary. Innovation often arises from understanding the structure so deeply that you know exactly which parts can be bent or reimagined without causing systemic collapse. That was precisely Musashi's strategy when he analyzed other schools of swordsmanship. He learned their rules and patterns, and then he exploited gaps they didn't even realize they had. Yet there is also a cautionary note here. Creativity without discipline can lead to chaos, too many ideas with no coherent way to implement them. On the other hand, discipline without creativity can lead to stagnation, an over-reliance on tradition or formula that fails when new challenges arise. Musashi's balance offers a path to harmonize the two. Let discipline ground you while letting creativity inspire you. Additionally, the spontaneous adaptability Musashi exhibited, especially in critical duels such as the one against Sasaki Kojiro, demonstrates how a prepared mind can seize an opportunity in a split second. In modern life, that opportunity might be a chance conversation that sparks a business partnership, or a sudden change in project scope that allows you to propose a daring new approach. If you're not prepared, mentally flexible, alert, and open, you could miss the moment. A final aspect of this disciplined creativity is reflection. Musashi spent periods in solitude, not merely training but pondering his experiences. In our busy lives, reflective practice often gets squeezed out by urgent tasks. However, setting aside time, whether journaling, meditating, or simply thinking quietly, can help synthesize what you've learned and direct your creative energies more effectively. By stepping back to assess which tactics worked, which didn't, and how you felt in the process, you refine your capacity to respond to future challenges with a blend of discipline and inventiveness. Thus, we come to see Musashi not just as a figure of Stoic discipline, but as a holistic model of human potential. His life story teaches us that beneath the hardened warrior exterior lay an inquiring mind, an artist's heart, and a spirit that welcomed change and innovation. By marrying discipline with creativity, we walk a more fertile path, ready to tackle whatever arises with both skill and originality. In reflecting on the totality of Musashi's teachings, it becomes evident that one of his greatest gifts to us is a framework for holistic growth, an approach that refuses to isolate mental, physical, and spiritual development. Each aspect informs and strengthens the others. We see this holistic perspective running throughout his philosophical writings, his penchant for various forms of art, and his insistence on testing knowledge in real-world conditions. The synergy of mind, body, and spirit is seen clearly in modern fields like sports science or mindfulness-based therapies, where integrated approaches consistently outperform narrow methods. An athlete who only trains physically but neglects mental conditioning and emotional well-being risks burnout or performance anxiety. Conversely, an over-intellectualized approach that never tests theories in physical reality yields abstract insights that fail under pressure. Musashi's life was a testament to the fact that real mastery cannot afford to ignore any dimension of the self. For those seeking to apply this idea, it starts by recognizing where you may be out of balance. Perhaps you excel intellectually but struggle with physical health, or you are physically strong but lack emotional resilience. Musashi's example would suggest that you intentionally engage the neglected areas, even if it initially feels uncomfortable. If you're a knowledge worker who rarely moves your body, incorporate disciplined physical training. If you're a fitness enthusiast who seldom reads or reflects deeply, explore the arts, philosophy, or spiritual traditions. The point is to become adept at bridging gaps, rather than letting them fester as blind spots. Moreover, it's important to consistently cycle back to the concept of self-awareness. Throughout his life, Musashi practiced introspection, particularly later in his years. He wrote extensively, but he also lived in solitude to understand his mind's workings. Modern neuroscience supports the idea that reflective practices, whether journaling, meditation, or therapy, help cultivate metacognition, thinking about one's own thinking, and emotional regulation. In essence, you learn to recognize patterns in your thoughts and behaviors, giving you the chance to correct course before bad habits take root. A holistic approach also implies engaging with some form of moral or ethical framework. Musashi's moral code, as articulated in Dokudo, might seem strict, but it provided him with a compass. In the chaotic world of feudal Japan, and indeed in our current times, having guiding principles can keep you oriented amid a sea of competing interests and distractions. Modern parallels might include adopting a personal code of integrity, environmental stewardship, or community service. Such commitments remind us that our actions ripple outward, affecting others, and that mastery cannot be purely self-serving if it is to be meaningful. Another facet of holistic growth is a respect for rest and recovery. While Musashi was famously relentless, he also knew the value of solitude and stepped away from relentless dueling later in life. For you, this might mean implementing weekly or monthly retreats from social media, planning digital detox weekends, or engaging in recreational activities that recharge you emotionally. This cyclical pattern of intense effort followed by deliberate renewal is how muscles grow stronger and how minds stay fresh, preventing the dullness that comes from unremitting grind. Ultimately, a holistic approach is not a static achievement but a living process, ever evolving, much like Musashi's own journey. You find balance, then life changes, and you adapt again. This cycle is the essence of what Musashi championed. Remain vigilant, remain disciplined, and remain open. Through this vigilance, discipline, and openness, you forge a self that is robust enough to withstand life's unpredictabilities and wise enough to glean lessons from every corner of experience. We arrive now at the culmination of our exploration, the recognition that Miyamoto Musashi's greatest legacy is not in the record of his undefeated duels, but in the enduring framework of mastery he left behind. His life demonstrates that self-mastery paves the way for mastery in any external domain, whether that domain be martial arts, business, art, or personal relationships. By living according to core principles, disciplined practice, adaptability, moral clarity, and emotional equilibrium, Musashi showed how a single individual can evolve into a force of nature. The take-home message for modern readers is both challenging and liberating. Your primary battlefield is within yourself. Out there in the world, be it a corporate environment, a competitive sports arena, or a personal passion project, countless variables remain outside your control. Competitors may be better funded, new technologies can disrupt your plans, and unforeseen crises can upend entire industries. Yet how you respond to these upheavals remains squarely in your hands. Musashi's approach asserts that by rigorously training your mind, refining your strategic thinking, and maintaining an honest moral compass, you can navigate any storm. Moreover, self-mastery does not imply perfection. Musashi, for all his feats, was a product of his era, a time of violence and strict social hierarchies. He undoubtedly had flaws, blind spots, and moments of error. What sets him apart is his relentless pursuit of improvement, his willingness to acknowledge ignorance, and his courage to walk his path regardless of societal expectations. This is a potent reminder that you need not wait for ideal circumstances or personal perfection to commence your own journey. The path is in the doing, the learning, and the humility to see mistakes as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. In practical terms, you can begin by identifying one area in which you wish to cultivate mastery. Perhaps it's a skill that would advance your career. Perhaps it's an aspect of emotional resilience, like managing anger or overcoming chronic anxiety. Write down your objectives, referencing the 5 elements from the Book of 5 Rings. Define your fundamentals, earth. Plan how you'll adapt, water. Specify when decisive action is needed, fire. Understand the external perspectives or competition, wind. And aim for a state of intuitive flow, void. Simultaneously, consult Dokodo for guidance on detachment, acceptance of impermanence, and the cultivation of a resilient moral code. Finally, remember that Musashi's parting words to us: today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men. Encapsulate the essence of incremental growth. Each day, your benchmark is not someone else's metrics, but your own improvement. By surpassing your previous level of discipline, skill, or understanding, the grand scheme that is the truest form of victory, growing to your highest potential, one deliberate step at a time. In closing, let this expanded reflection on Miyamoto Musashi's life and philosophy challenge you to re-examine your own path. Whether you're facing major life transitions, seeking excellence in a particular domain, or simply wanting a more profound internal peace, Musashi's teachings offer time-tested insights. The journey requires work and sometimes hardship, but as Musashi would say, the way is in training. If you choose to walk it, you do so not just with a sword in hand, but with an awakened mind and an indomitable spirit, ready to face the battles within and without, with both discipline and grace. As the dust settles and the story of Miyamoto Musashi fades into history, his powerful lessons still echo through time. Today we've learned not just about winning battles, but about mastering the deepest, most challenging opponent of all, ourselves. Musashi's incredible journey proves that true strength doesn't lie in defeating others, but in overcoming your own fears, distractions, and limitations. Imagine your own life as an epic movie, one where you hold the power to rewrite your destiny through discipline, courage, and unyielding perseverance. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which part of Musashi's legendary life resonated the most with you? Have you faced moments where his philosophy could have changed the outcome? Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's start an inspiring conversation. If you enjoyed this story and want more powerful insights on personal mastery and growth, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to join our growing community. Until next time, keep mastering your path. Your legend is just beginning.